All right. Welcome to the meeting of the Non-Energy Utilities Subcommittee of the Environment Transportation Committee. And today we're going to be discussing HB 34. So to refresh your memories, HB 34 is this bill where we had very compelling testimony on why the bill was necessary, that requires grading systems to be placed on a drainage inlet in order to prevent somebody getting sucked down the drain, as happened to the poor person, the family, or Mason from the family that we heard from. And this is titled Mason's Law after him, after the boy that lost his life in a very tragic accident. So this bill isn't really a long bill, but there are some things I think that need to be worked on in this bill. First, I'd like to ask Kristen Flynn of our staff to update us on where this bill is in the Senate. There is a Senate cross-file. So if you could just update us to where this stands in the Senate and what we're waiting for when it comes to the Senate.
Sure. So I don't really have much of a status update. There is a Senate crossfile. I heard from my counterpart on the Senate committee that she was under the impression that the Senate sponsor was meeting and potentially working on amendments. I haven't seen any amendments. We certainly received testimony that we can talk about here that raises some of the implementation concerns, but I don't have any language, amendment language.
Okay, so we're kind of waiting on the Senate a little bit to see what they do, but I think we can assume that some of these areas that we're going to flag today will probably also be raised in the Senate. So, Kristen, do you want to? Maybe it would be helpful if you went through the bill and flagged where these areas are that we're going to need some work, and then I'm going to open it up to committee members for questions. Um, uh, to see if they have any questions. And that's really it. We're really not in a position to vote on this bill today by any means, but I did want to get a work session started so we could have the discussion. So Kristen, would you do that, please?
Sure. And do you want to see the bill text on the screen or just me go over?
I think it would be helpful if we saw the bill text, yes.
Okay, okay.
It's not a very long bill.
Sure. Oh, I'm not able to share.
Oh, Dan, would you make it so she can share, please? Got it? Ah, there we go.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the definitions, but the substance of the bill is requiring municipalities to construct or install an improved grading system on any new or existing open drainage inlet within the municipality, and retrofits of existing inlets must be completed by June 1st, 2027. So the first item that was raised across the various pieces of favorable amendment testimony relates to the scope of the bill and the definition of open drainage inlet. So that is on line 8, that should be on your screen. And so the concern is just basically making recommendations. We didn't get specific recommendations, but suggestions that the types of stormwater structure should be further clarified. The definition in the bill is described as being broad, and it does not align with the 4 types of drainage inlets generally recognized under state highways, highway drainage manual. There are also questions about whether this would apply to culverts and headwalls, which are not typically classified as inlets by engineers. And then it goes further with Baltimore City specifically recommending that the scope of the bill focus on large open culvert headwalls and similar inlet configurations associated with entrapment hazards rather than all open drainage inlets, to prioritize locations of greatest concern and that thus avoid retrofitting structures that present minimal risk.
Mhm.
And then again, to the scope, the definition then also where to target inlets. Gaithersburg brings up that it maintains numerous drainage inlets that are inaccessible to the general public, located in secured or limited access areas, or otherwise pose minimal risk, and recommends allowing local governments to conduct a safety evaluation to identify drainage inlets that present a demonstrated risk to public safety. And Maryland, the MAMSA also recommends recommendations for identifying higher risk inlets. So there's both this definition of what types of stormwater structures, and then whether or not they should be targeted in a more narrow fashion.
Okay.
Okay, and so then the requirement also requires that the grading be installed. So there were concerns raised that requiring these approved grading systems as, the remedy for all inlets that are at risk, that there could be other ways to address the risk. And there was recommendations that it should be up to the locals to make decisions on a case-by-case basis, and that could involve grading, but it could also involve fencing or signage. And then there was also concerns about unintended consequences of requiring grading systems because they reduce hydraulic capacity, which could lead to more flooding. They also could be susceptible to clogging, which would present flooding issues and also maintenance concerns. The requirement for retrofits is in special section 2, starting in line 26, that takes effect June 1st. So the bill as drafted would require all these retrofits to be completed by June 1st, 2027, and that presents a timeframe challenge for a task that would conceivably be pretty large to complete. The bill applies to drainage inlets within municipalities. There was concerns raised about whether private property should be brought into it, and if so, that private property owners would be the ones responsible to carry out the requirements of the bill to retrofit those stormwater inlets. And then finally, there was this overall just concern about the costs of implementation, and there's not a funding source identified to assist municipalities with carrying out the bill's requirements.
Right.
I think
that's like pretty much the whole bill. That's it, right? Are there any other?
Yeah, that's it. And I think there was the whole the city of Gaithersburg, who brought up kind of changing to more of a what was it, a safety evaluation. I think MML liked that approach as well.
Yeah, there was this whole notion of doing an safety evaluation first.
And then I also, a piece of testimony that could be helpful to go over was the town of Mount Airy lays out the actions that the town took in response to this, and just kind of, it's still kind of the same thing. They went and had to identify all of the inlets, identify which ones were at risks, and then the costs of retrofitting the inlets that were identified at being.
But they actually did undertake it, right?
They did.
Yeah. And just for the committee, that's where it happened, right? Was Mount Airy. So they did undertake those provisions, but they did a safety evaluation first. I think that's the important point.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so that kind of gives you the scope of what we have to do on this bill. Thanks, Kristen, for that. Are there any like questions or comments on what Kristen went over? And then I'm going to suggest a way forward. So, and go into this a little bit more. Does anybody have, yeah, raise your hand like Delegate Grammer just did. Go ahead, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to see, so in committees, usually folks would bring a couple suggested options. This seems to be a lot of broad changes. I wanted to see how you wanted to work this. I mean, we could do a 50-state survey pretty quickly, see what other states have done, I just kind of wanted to see how you wanted to approach this.
Right. And I think that's what I wanted to discuss today. So let me get some questions out of the way and then we'll go back to that because that's a good point.
Sure.
Put a pin in that. And Delegate Naraki, you have your hand up as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for being a couple minutes late here. Sorry, I hope I'm not freezing. Looked like I was. My only question is, what was the rationale? And maybe, Kristen, maybe already discussed this, but it appears to me that it's only applying to municipalities. I kind of put my Baltimore County hat on when I think about that. It has no implication to Baltimore County then because we have no municipalities. So is there a reason that we're only potentially looking at municipalities here versus other kinds of local governments?
I mean, I don't really think there was a reason provided. I think it was just, I think the intent was have a more narrow scope of the bill. But, you know, there's not, I don't think there was a reasoning provided of why it was limited to municipalities. I think it was just to narrow the scope.
Okay, I get it. But presumably if this problem exists in municipalities, it would also exist in places like Baltimore County that doesn't have municipalities, but that could have these open inlets or however we're characterizing them in the bill. So that's kind of why I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I don't know where that puts me with the bill, but I just wanted to put that out there, Madam Chair.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that is worth noting, particularly since Baltimore County is such a large jurisdiction, you know, in the state. It's not the only jurisdiction that doesn't have municipalities, but it is probably the largest one. Howard County also does not have municipalities. So yeah, we may want to expand it. I should say, I think, you know, part of the reason MACO didn't weigh in on this bill maybe is because it didn't include counties. That's speculation on my part, but I think that that's probably true. So that's something to think about. And if the subcommittee wants to expand it, we need to be mindful that, you know, my personal opinion on this is that you didn't see anybody come in opposed to this bill. And I think the reason they didn't come in opposed to this bill is because of the compelling motivation for this bill. And no one wants to be, you know, everybody understands why this is important. But, you know, there were a lot of issues raised, as Kristen pointed out. So let me, to Delegate Grammer's question about how we go forward. So what we can do here is, you know, we can, Kristen is working she has contacted MML, and she has, you know, reached out to some, you know, she can reach out to some of the other advocates who testified for amendments on this bill. And, you know, we can see if they have amendments that they want to present to us. So that's one avenue that we should take. And that's what, you know, we had hoped to get there today, but I think we're not. We're still kind of waiting. And you know, the action on the Senate side may also move that along. So I think with a bill that needs this much work, we don't want to, you know, just do our own thing and not have the Senate move at the same pace as, you know, in the same direction that we are. So hopefully we both end up with a bill that looks the same in both houses, or to the extent possible we can. So I think that's one avenue. I think the other avenue is we ourselves, knowing what the concerns raised here, and Delegate Naraki just raised another one, right? We can also, you know, talk about our own set of amendments that we bring to help improve the bill. So what I would like to do today is identify some of those areas where maybe we as a committee would like to start working on some amendments. Okay. I think one that we can do, yes, Delegate Grammer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, a suggestion maybe. So I didn't come prepared with any amendments today.
Oh,
but
no. Yeah.
I could work them all really quickly. If Kristen could write up all those points, like if we could map out what we need to address, I think that would be very formative for me. And if she could email the subcommittee, I mean, we could do this really quickly and we could all give some different options.
All right, that makes some sense. If that's okay, Kristen.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay.
I just going back, because I heard Delegate Kramer talk about a 50 state survey. I asked the library to look into state local laws, and they just didn't find anything. I'm not sure that means they don't exist, but they weren't able to find anything on the research request that I've sent over there. Just FYI.
I mean, there may actually be there may be municipal laws on this, right, that we don't know about, but
Yeah,
you didn't find anything on a statewide basis. Delegate Healy.
they look for local too, local and state.
Oh, it was. Okay. Delegate Healy. You're muted, Delegate Healy.
And then I wasn't, and then I was. Okay, so I'm sure you can hear me now.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And it's unfortunate that the bill requires so much work, but I think that if we can refine it and focus it a little better, maybe it will, rather than trying to do all things for all people. I do like the idea. I do think that all the local governments should be covered for sure. I mean, I think that's an easy amendment because you don't want to have people like in Prince George's County where you have unincorporated areas right next to municipalities, and it just would be like totally unfair to people to have protection in one place just because of where they live. If we're going to do something statewide, I think we should do it across the board. That's my first point. But on the other piece of it, the testimony we had, the terrible accident where this child, oh, it was just horrible, happened on private property.
I know.
And so I'm not sure we should leave private property out. So I mean, we're talking about the places where it would cover, but I also think that we don't need to be extremely prescriptive about what to do about it. Like we could leave more of that to the local government to figure out if they do a study and look at what's going on in their community, whether it's the county or the state. If they do the study, then they will know some places are not accessible. They don't need to do much. Some places are, you can put a sign up, but other places you actually need to do something because
Right.
it's dangerous where it's children play and and it's just too close to a park or a playground or something like that. So, but I think at the local level, they would be the people that would be paying attention to those kinds of details rather than put them into the bill. That's my opinion.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Good thoughts. And for what it's worth, I agree with you on the private property aspect of this. That's almost an easy part of the bill. In other words, if you have a certain type of drainage structure on your private property, you have to take basic safety precautions. I think, that we probably can say, right? Who enforces that might be we might, I don't know if we want to cover that in this bill or not, but
Maybe you could, I'm
yeah.
sorry, but
Yeah, go
maybe
ahead.
for enforcement, you could just make it that, give them some liability so that
Yes.
they have to pay, get really expensive insurance if they don't do that, or that they
Or
can
fine them. We could fine them too.
You could find them too, but I think just requiring them to put up a bond or something to make sure that they have skin in the game.
Yeah. So let me go back to this idea. Delegate Naraki, you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask just a further question for the subcommittee to consider. I think in some of the testimony, I apologize, I don't have it up now, but maybe it was Baltimore City. Someone raised the point that there are some of these inlets that exist or drains. They're in areas that people can't access as well. And I think we should consider that because I'm not sure that we should say require Baltimore City, and I'm not trying to pick on Baltimore City, but whoever it was that made that example, that I don't know that should be the top priority of addressing those kinds of places. So just a thought for the group here.
Yeah, I think that's a good thought. And I was about to say that. I think this notion of having an evaluation, a safety evaluation, I think that would be a good thing to put in the bill. In other words, I think we do have to rely somewhat on local officials to evaluate these, structures. And the ones that they identify as being a safety hazard, either because they're accessible to the public or they have, that I think we may even, I don't know if we can do this, Kristen, and maybe we could get some guidance from some of the advocates, but we may even be able to say, if it's accessible to the public, if it, and if it's a certain size, which the bill already does, right? I would suggest that we might want to use the state highway definition. I don't know what that says, but that's already in law. And presumably there is, experience around that. So maybe we look at that. But I do think a safety evaluation is an important part of this bill. That we don't necessarily want to make this apply to every single drainage facility. That we want it to apply to ones that, as Delegate Naraki said, are accessible to the public. Um, and and Delegate Healy pointed out that some are more accessible to the public than others. And so we may want to give some, my opinion is we do want to give some flexibility to local jurisdictions about how they address the safety of these. May require a grate. A lot of them probably will require a grate, but some of them may not. Fencing, if you fenced it off, that might be enough to take care of it, depending upon how the drainage is configured. So I think we do want to limit the scope in some way and maybe have a safety evaluation. I think is everybody agreed that we want this to also apply to private property? Yeah.
I have
Delegate,
thoughts.
okay, what are your thoughts, Delegate Grammer, on that?
So I think one of the things we're talking about is to which circumstances of infrastructure does this apply? And look, we could mandate that every hole be closed off in the entire state, private property, public property, municipal, local, state government. And I'm not sure that's what we all are aiming for. For private property, a lot of these are going to be areas that the public doesn't have access to.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Is it right to make someone liable for a situation that you'd likely have to trespass to get to one of these pieces of infrastructure? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if it's on private property, it could be a situation where it's the child of the property owner, but it would likely be it was someone, a member of the public, who didn't know the drain was there, then got sucked into the drain, but they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Does that make sense? So
let me ask a question of it does make sense. Let me ask a question. Kristen, maybe you remember. I don't. I know this was on private property. Maybe somebody else remembers. I know this was on private property, but by private property, was it someone's yard or was it like a homeowners association?
it could be like
It was an apartment complex.
An apartment complex. So that's different, right? I'm not sure that we want to say if you have a drainage ditch in your backyard and you have a single family home, that you should be required to take all these, do all this because, yeah, I mean, it's not accessible theoretically to the public, right? But I think that we might be able to say if it's a common area in a community apartment complex or common ownership community, because there are a lot of drainage ditches in and around those areas. Maybe that's what we make it apply to when we talk about private property.
And I think it's important to know, like, it could be an easement. It could be an actual utility owned infrastructure that is located within private property, but is not actually owned by the private property owner. So that may also be a consideration.
Right. You're right. Delegate Long.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, I'm pondering the private property aspect, and I actually think it may be a good idea. And here's why. What if I am over somebody's house and I'm entertaining or whatever, and I don't know if this is way out there, so forgive me. Um, would the homeowner then be held liable? Could a homeowner be sued? Um, what about in the event of, I'm thinking pretty broadly here, because it was very tragic, um, of a home that is being rented out to a tenant.
Uh,
Um, and I'm not sure if Kristen could, weigh in. I just don't know if that makes any sense. What I'm saying is, applicable, but I think it may be safer to cover everything with a broad stroke. I don't want to, of course, be overly burdensome on homeowners, but in the same token, I think there could be some unique circumstances that would maybe warrant just a little more movement on our part. Thank you.
Okay. And you just muted again. The last three words you said, Delegate Long, we lost.
I'm sorry, this blame General Assembly Wi-Fi. I think it just could warrant some more movement on our part.
Okay.
Maybe again without being too restrictive, but just making sure that we really thoroughly catch as many as as we can. Of course, I don't think people are just intentionally having this on their property, but yeah.
Right. And so let me, before I call on Delegate Naraki, let me ask, I don't know whether you know this or not, Kristen, but there are, Delegate Long, liability laws and insurance situations. I mean, if somebody comes to my house and they fall down my stairs in my house, I could have liability for that if there was, depending upon what that situation was with my insurance. I don't know, would the same, I mean, do we think, Kristen, that the same might apply in this situation? I don't know that much about insurance law, but or liability law. Does it apply to the yard as well?
I mean, I would think so, but I'm going off of my own like life experience, not like legal knowledge of
Okay.
liabilities.
And
If somebody falls in a hole in your yard kind of thing, that you can have liabilities with that. So similar to that, if they had an injury or something that involved a storm drain, I think that would be the same type
Yeah,
of,
I do too.
yeah.
Delegate Naraki.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I just had a lot of thoughts on this because I have a lot of waterfront areas in my district. So I think about a bunch of my residents that have driveways that will often have a drainage pipe kind of around the driveway, right there. And I don't think that's the intent of what we would necessarily be trying to go after in all cases, like with private property. But I would hate to see, depending upon the way that we worded that, if we did do that, to get a circumstance where, like, I also have a lot of old people that live in those kinds of houses, right? Like, and that could be an expensive thing potentially. Like, wouldn't want someone to have to give up their home to put a grate like on that pipe there, sort of thing. And so I don't know if it's maybe if there's a building permit that is put in, like you can maybe do it that way. Maybe it's when a home is sold, maybe it's that. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of different. I wouldn't want to make this so cost prohibitive for someone to have to like give up their house potentially to comply. That's my only thought with that there. Now I understand the private property angle, particularly like apartment complexes and stuff like that, but I'm just thinking bigger picture here. There could be some things that get swept up that we're not thinking about there.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we do need to be, I mean, we're not trying to redo building codes here, right? I mean, we're looking at storm drains, but we're not trying to like completely change permitting services and all that. So, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Delegate Long has a great point. Luckily, I came from the Civil Law Subcommittee, and let me tell you that they are liable in that circumstance. They're pretty much liable for anything that happens on their property. I think the important part of this bill is, this is essentially a mandate. We're looking at municipalities, local jurisdictions, and now we're talking about private property owners. The situation that Delegate Naraki discusses, those holes under the driveway, they could get sucked into this kind of requirement. And that's something I think that's what we should consider here.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
that was also included in testimony. I think even with the rural areas and just all the culverts that exist and how that might be not the intent to capture every drain pipe.
Right. So I think if we limited private, this is my feeling on this, and if you vehemently disagree, let me know. But I think if we focus on private property to the extent that it's common ownership communities or apartment complexes, where people live, because those are common areas that, the individual homeowners or the individual renter doesn't have any, really control over. And I think it is fair to say you as the common ownership community or the apartment complex landlord, you need to make sure that, that this is safe. So unless we disagree with that, I think that's kind of the direction we're going to go on the private property aspect. I think the other aspects that you raised, we talked a little bit about the alternative mitigation, and we probably want to look at that. And that'll come out though in the safety evaluation. If we make it clear that we're talking about drains that are accessible to the public and have a certain characteristics to them, which the bill goes into a little bit anyway, I think we'll take care of of some of this. But we may also want to build some flexibility into the bills, particularly when it comes to governments, local jurisdictions, about what they can and can't do to mitigate it. The retrofit, I think we need to look at a timeline that works. And I think we're going to have to get input from MML, MACO, and others about, okay, what would be a timeline? Because I agree. I think saying you have to retrofit all your drains by January 1, 2027 is impossible. And then the funding issue is a tough one. I don't know that I have a lot of thoughts on that at the moment. Does anybody have any thoughts on how we address the funding issue? Because they're going to say it's an unfunded mandate. That's what they're gonna, that's what's going to be raised. Delegate Grammer.
Yeah, that's the whole question, right? Look, this is a mandate, and they're going to have to do it. So I don't know that there's a solution here. It's a mandate, and is what it is, right?
Yeah, it is.
I think maybe the best thing we
I'm
could
sorry.
do
Go
is
ahead, Delegate Graham. I mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think the best thing we could do is draft the bill well, and that, they're going to have to take the pain. If we do it correctly, it'll be minimal.
And the other thing we could do is we could build into the bill, the ability to recover some of those costs, right? Especially if we do private property and you have an inspection, you can build in, some fees to cover the cost. I think for the municipalities and the counties themselves, that's a little more difficult. Ann Healy, you have a question, Delegate Healy.
Oh, yes, and I don't have the mute on now. It is, I think that's why it's really important for us to focus on the kind of drains that are really seriously dangerous, and not every hole in the ground, as you said, but that are of a certain size where somebody could actually get sucked in, and we can maybe also see if there's a way to have some kind of a grant program to do the studies, or some kind of some kind of assistance to the local governments from the state to not to do all the work, but to at least help them to pay for the studies, because especially the municipalities, some of them are very small, and they don't have a big tax base, and the lower income ones, where the people don't even have a lot of income tax revenue, it would be an unfair burden. So I think that it's something where the state could probably offer some kind of I don't know how you would do it. We have to think about this. Maybe we have some kind of competitive bidding, or let maybe somebody come up with a way to decide how much it costs to do these kind of studies. But I think once the study is done and you might not have anything to fix.
Right. I don't think it's a study as much as an evaluation of.
Okay, yeah, but that's what I'm saying, is that if they could get some kind of assistance, the same way we kind of do highway user money for we can maybe find something connected to the water systems somehow. I'm just spitballing it now, but that's it.
We're all spitballing it today. Delegate Naraki.
Final thought that I have on this. I toured a water facility in Baltimore City right before session, just when I heard that we were going to have this, just to kind of understand. And so I know this doesn't talk about holes in the ground, but Baltimore City and Baltimore County, we have like 15,000 miles of pipe, which means potentially like lots of holes in the ground. So I do think that we need to give a very long runway for certain jurisdictions to be able to comply. You know, if we decide to move forward with this, like it will be a monumental undertaking, and I'm sure WSSC has quite a few and others as well. So maybe there's a tiered approach. Maybe you identify the highest targets first and you get those out of the way first or something. But I do think that there needs to be some runway here for municipalities and local governments to comply.
I agree with the long runway, but I also think that we're not talking about, I think really what we're talking about are storm drains. Is that right, Kristen? We're talking about, because that's what happened in this case. It was a downpour, and it was a flood, essentially, a mini flood, swept the child into the drainage ditch. And so I think, is that right? We're talking really about storm drains, right?
Correct. Yeah, you're right.
So not the water systems, they have their own thing. But I think if we can stick with storm drains.
Well, I should have been more specific, Delegate. In Baltimore County and Baltimore City, it's all one. So the sanitary and this, it all flows into one system. I'm sorry, I should have given more context to that. But I mean, I can think in my neighborhood alone, Madam Chair, there's probably like 20 of these openings, and we're only talking about maybe about 50 homes in my neighborhood. So just think about that. Like
there's a lot of them. Yeah,
there's a lot of them. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done. I'm just saying that it'll take a long time to do, even if you're working not around the clock, but a lot on this project.
So I think your larger point is the right one, which is we need a long runway for these, particularly these municipalities and counties to, comply. You look like you want to say something, Kristen. Did you want to say anything, or are you just listening?
I'm just listening. And the one thing just, to think about too is, there's a lot of great ideas. There's just, obviously it's a very compelling interest for public safety, but, just think about the finite amount of time that the body has to address this issue and just getting the needle move forward. And maybe it won't resolve every public safety hazard, but moving forward on the issue, rather than, you get into enforcement and fees and all that, like then you're going to expand the scope to a point where the impact might create other challenges of getting the bill to move.
Okay. Delegate Grammer.
Yeah, I wanted to point out, I was looking at the definition, open drainage inlet.
Yeah.
I think that definition might be a little bigger than we're anticipating here.
Well, somebody suggested we use the state highway definition, and I don't know what that is off the top of my. Do you know
that was included, but it was I don't think it was necessarily. I think what was raised was that the drainage, the open drainage inlet was the definition did not align with what is included in the SHA drainage manual. But there was also another issue that was raised, is that these inlets aren't necessarily culverts and other types of stormwater structures that could also be problematic that may want to be addressed. So I agree, that the type of structure that needs to be targeted does need to be further fleshed out.
Yeah. So if you look on page 2 of the bill, I'll just read it. You don't have to put it back up. Starting on line 8, it says open drainage inlet means a structure with a surface opening that has a diameter of 12 inches or more. And so a diameter of 12 inches or more, that's not that big. And it's designed to collect and drain stormwater runoff. That's a really, really broad definition. And I think we might want to, really trim that down. And then I think adding the requirement that it be, in an area used by the public, or whatever we want to say there, in terms of, because we do have to narrow this down. We can't expect these jurisdictions to go around and, plug all these drains. It just, it won't happen.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. I think that probably is, we've said a lot about that today. And Kristen is going to give us a list of the concerns raised in the bill. And, any ideas that you have, please send them. Kristen, you can send that to me and I'll send it out. And I'll collect the thoughts from people. If I would suggest not necessarily going and getting an amendment drafted until we figure out what other amendments are coming, like from the Senate, for example, what the Senate sponsor is talking about. I am getting the feeling that we do want to do something here, though. I think that's pretty clear.
So,
Delegate Long.
Thank you. I'm sorry, brain lapse. Who's the Senate sponsor again?
Boucher. Oh, in the House it's Boucher. In the Senate it's Senator Karen Lewis Young.
Thank you. I'm like, he's a senator now? Okay, got you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Delegate Baker.
Yes. Have we thought about, or maybe you have already reached out to the state highways, the roads department, and possibly got some input from what their suggestions would be?
We haven't heard from them, but I can reach out to state highways.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
They
involved
may-
with
the other
they're
thing-
involved with
yeah.
storm drainage and designs and things like that. There, they may have some valuable input for us.
And yes, they may, and they may also have their own program, meaning we could exempt them from this, right? If they're doing their own.
Well, they're not included in the bill right now.
They're not. Okay. But well, anyway, Delegate Baker's suggestion still is a good
Yeah.
one. We should reach out to them and see what they do. Because they must have thousands of these things, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
All right. Anything else? I'm sorry.
And
Uh,
can I ask
uh,
another question?
Yeah, good. Yeah, go ahead. Sure, of course.
Also, I don't know why I'm thinking, but some counties and municipalities may already have some policies in place to where they're already dealing with them. Maybe MACO or MML could help us out with some thoughts on
May
that
know.
also.
Yeah, that would be useful to know. Yeah, and we can always write a bill that says if you have a policy in place that we can recognize that, right? And then we don't, then they, we can recognize that. Okay. Well, this is a lot of work, but it probably is worth it, given, the compelling nature of the motivation here. Okay, well, I thank everybody for their input on this. This was a very thoughtful and good discussion. Like I said, I think we definitely want to try to do something here. And we will, we'll continue to monitor what happens in the Senate, and then Kristen's going to continue to reach out to MML. I'd also if you don't mind, Kristen, reaching out to MACO as well.
Sure.
Especially if we want to make it apply to counties, which I agree with. I think the points here that were made were salient points. Yes, Delegate Healy.
yeah, I wanted to let you know that in the middle of all our discussions a little while ago, Dominic Butchko came running into my office thinking that we were going to vote on amendments. So he was all panicked about it, just because we were
Okay.
talking about MACO. So
No,
they would
no.
definitely appreciate us reaching out to them.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that.
No.
Okay. So I think that's where we are on this. Let me just say that we have some other bills that we may or may not consider that are out there for right now. I'd like to kind of work on this one, and I know we have some bigger ones coming because I filed them. So I know we have some bigger ones kind of coming related to water utilities and some other things. So I'd like to get this one, in good shape and pass it, because I think we all have an emotional attachment to it. But we will have some more bills. Some of them we've heard, some of them we haven't. So stay tuned. But for now, we're going to try to work on this one and see if we can get going. I don't really have anything else for today. I think we just need to wait till we get some amendments on this bill.
Okay,
Before we move.
some of us has to get to another meeting in 5
Yes.
minutes.
So I am going to ask if anybody has any final thoughts. If not, I'm going to say we're adjourned for today. Stay tuned, and we will meet again soon. Thanks, everybody.